Thank you. Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure to be up here in front of you all. Welcome to the newest edition of LinkedIn Speaker Series. A quick reminder of why we have the LinkedIn Speaker Series. Our purpose is to bring innovative ideas and great thinkers to the stage in order to inspire our employees and members and to make everyone more productive and successful. Another reminder is you can see past speakers at speakers.linkedin.com. And if you're into podcasts, all these speaker series are available as podcasts, download on iTunes. I am very pleased today to be able to bring to the stage two very enlightened, accomplished, and inspiring gentlemen, Deepak Chopra and Fred Kaufman. Fred Kaufman is LinkedIn's very own VP of Leadership and Organizational Development and also the author of Conscious Business. Fred was actually on this stage as a speaker prior to joining LinkedIn as an employee, and we are thrilled to have him back here today to have a conversation with Deepak. Deepak Chopra may need no introduction, but allow me to give one nonetheless. Deepak also was a speaker here at LinkedIn, the Speaker Series, a few years back. In addition to that, he is an internationally known expert in the field of mind-body healing. He is an accomplished, world-renowned speaker and author, having written over 80 books in 43 different languages, 22 of which are New York Times bestsellers. His medical training is in internal medicine and endocrinology, and his list of accomplishments goes on and on. Both personally and professionally, I've been very, very much looking forward to this speaker series. Personally, it was about 10 years ago where I was first exposed to Deepak's teachings, and to say it had a great influence on my life would be a vast understatement. Professionally, I'm very excited because the principles of our wellness program here at LinkedIn are grounded in the subject matter of Deepak's new book, Super Genes. That principle being that everything you need to be great in your life, for your mind and body to heal, for you to build the resilience to the stress that is inevitable in your life, resides within you. Our only responsibility is to create a nurturing environment that allows our greatness to flourish. Here at LinkedIn, we teach thoughts, breathing, hydration, nutrition, movement, and rest as a guide to accomplish that. And we're very pleased to allow that all to come to fruition today with this conversation. So without further ado, please welcome to the stage Deepak Chopra and Fred Kaufman.
Great spiritual teachers have a very strange quality, and it's that they can create intimacy at scale. If you've ever been in the presence of a great spiritual teacher, there's thousands of people around, and yet each one of us feels he's talking to me or she's talking to me. Until now, spiritual teachers were constrained by technology, because to be with a spiritual teacher, you really had to be there. But now with the digital age, you don't even have to be there. You can be on a screen or you can see it through an app. And one thing that I find incredibly amazing of Deepak as a spiritual teacher is that he's been able to scale in the digital age, because there are millions of people that would speak about Deepak like a personal friend. And I include myself, although I never met him before in this close proximity. I've seen Deepak before, but not like this. And yet I notice I speak of him as a dear friend of mine, because he's influenced my life so much, and that's amazing. The other constraint that technology imposed on many of the things that we'll discuss today is that the spiritual teachers couldn't really prove what they were saying. It was more an experience, but the science was not subtle or developed enough to ground what they intimately knew in a scientific basis. But today, we do have the science, just like we have the digital technology, to see things we could never see before. And it's so beautiful that all this ancient wisdom is now becoming the most modern science. So I'm honored to be a host and to invite Deepak to share with us some of the things that he has been discovering and telling the world about how physically we're manifesting many of the spiritual principles that he's been presenting for all his life. So thank you very much, Deepak. And I'd love to ask you, how how would you summarize this innovation in science that allows you to ground down the spiritual principles in the genetics?
So first, just clarify what we mean by spirit. Okay, spirit is the same thing as consciousness or awareness. So are you guys aware right now? Okay. Who's the I that is aware? Where is the I that is having this experience? We'll cover that in the second half, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But all experience occurs in awareness. Any experience. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, images, the physical world, your own body, your mind. It all occurs in consciousness. We'll discuss later where consciousness is, but you're a conscious being right now, having an experience. And what we now recognize, which should have been obvious intuitively, that there is no experience that you have that's not recorded in your body, in your brain, but also in the rest of your body. And the most amazing thing is, it's recorded and actually influences the activity of your genes. So genes are not these genes, but the genes that you were born with. You were born with 23,000 genes. You received half of them from your mother and half from your father. And then there's another structure called the microbiome, which is the genes of bacteria that you inhaled as you came out into this world from your mother's secretions. You swallowed them, you inhaled them, and you also imbibed them through contact with the physical world and your parents and siblings. And there are 3 million of those genes that are not human, but they're part of your ecology, of your biology. Okay, so for every one gene that you have that's human, you have 150 times bacterial genes. You're a bacterial colony with a few human cells hanging on. And as you started to experience life after you were born, through the 5 senses, through contact, personal relationships, emotions, then you created another structure above the gene that's called the epigenome. And this came about because your genes were responding to experiences. And this set of proteins, which is above the genome, is called the epigenome. So when we coined this word, Rudy and I, supergene, it was about these 3 entities: your genes, your microbiome, and your epigenome, and how they actually modulate your biological activity towards either self-regulation or what is called healing, or if things are not going well, towards inflammation, or maybe what you could say a downgrading of the gene activity. So that's where spirituality and biology come together. There's no experience which does not have a biological correlate. Okay, and we can talk about this in simple levels. So, if you're feeling love, compassion, joy, empathy, peace, equanimity, then there's a part of your brain called the limbic brain that gets activated through genetic activity, because any activation in your brain requires neural networks to be activated, which requires genes to be activated. So if you're feeling those emotions, your body goes into self-regulation through the limbic brain. On the other hand, if you're feeling fear, anxiety, hostility, anger, guilt, shame, mistrust, then your body goes into the opposite of self-regulation, which is inflammation. And now we know that inflammation is, in one way or another, connected with all chronic illnesses, whether it's heart disease, cardiovascular accidents, autoimmune illnesses. The surprising thing which I learned, which is recently collaborating with Rudy, that only 5% of disease-related gene mutations are fully penetrant, which means they're unstoppable. And they're bad mutations that you acquire genetically, but they're so rare that they're not in the vast majority of the population. So somebody had a gene mutation. A mutation is like a spelling mistake. Think of DNA as a letter, and there are only 4 letters, A, T, C, and G, standing for certain base chemicals. So if DNA is the letter, a gene is a word. It's a stretch of these letters that codes for a protein or a unit of heredity. And so a mutation is a spelling mistake, it's a typo. And most typos can be ignored. Like in a manuscript, you can say, oh, this is a minor typo. It doesn't make a difference to the story. But some typos can't. Those are the 5% that say Angelina Jolie's mutation for breast cancer was a rare one. So we knew that was going to happen. Like that, for other diseases, there are rare mutations. But 95% of disease-related gene mutations are influenced by lifestyle. Things that Michael said, some of those things, thoughts, hydration, nutrition, exercise, movement. We now know yoga, breathing, emotions. Those things influence how your genes interact with each other.
So one of the things that you mentioned in the book is that we all live trapped in a story that we're conditioned by our genes. And that story is not true, that the genes don't determine, history doesn't determine our future.
Yes, in 95% of cases, okay? Yes. So for the vast majority, it doesn't, genes are not our destiny. Okay, now of course, we are now talking only about mutations. We're not talking about genes for blue eyes or blonde hair. Those are not mutations, they're normal genes. So we're talking only by the errors in the genes, in the mutations. They're not our destiny anymore. We didn't know this in 2003 when President Clinton, in the White House, we declared we've discovered the human genome. We know all the mystery of life. But at that time, all they knew was what the genes were. We didn't know anything significantly about the microbiome, about epigenes, and how thoughts and emotions and behaviors and personal relationships and social interactions and environment, how they influence gene expression. So it was a premature thing for everyone to declare we've discovered the secret of life. We hadn't, because it was just the genome, which is basically the alphabet and the words. But your life is not just alphabet and words. It's sentences and paragraphs and chapters and books and even epics, because your genes encode the memory of evolution and all the experiences of your ancestors. Now, I'd like to mention this. I was at a meditation with Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, and he's a calligrapher. So he was drawing a circle. He was at our studio in New York. He said, I invite my mother to draw the circle with me. Then he said, I invite my father to draw the circle with me. And slowly he invited all his ancestors. Then he invited his animal ancestors and his insect ancestors and his microbial ancestors. And it was so obvious, it should be, that in 100 trillion cells of your body, which is more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and your human body is actually a representation of the total universe, because the carbon, the hydrogen, the oxygen, the nitrogen that makes your DNA, it was manufactured in the crucible of a star in some galaxy. In fact, different atoms in different parts of your body may have come from different galaxies. So you are right now the activity of the universe, activity, not a noun, a verb, and that activity encodes within it the history of life since the beginning of time. 2.8 billion years ago on our planet, the first biological organisms appeared on the rims of volcanoes, and that chain of being hasn't been interrupted until this moment. Leave alone your human ancestors. If one of them wasn't in the mood or had a headache, you wouldn't be here. Okay, so what are the statistical probabilities of you being here, right? It took the whole universe, and actually almost an infinite amount of coincidences or synchronicities for you to be here right now. And so, we say, oh, it was just a coincidence. But what does the word coincidence mean? Coinciding. It's the same thing as synchronicity. Many things happening that's synchronized in time. And your happening to be here at this moment is a conspiracy of coincidences spanning 13.8 billion years of cosmic evolution. If you're not totally bewildered by this, if you're not totally bamboozled by this, if you're not totally surprised by this, if you're not totally, humbled into reverence for existence, then, you're asleep.
Thank you. Another way in which people think that genes are destiny is to consider their behavior and say, well, I get upset because it's genetic, or I can't stop myself from eating chocolate because it's my genes.
Yes.
And we all tend to blame our behavior on our genes, and it turns out that is absolutely not the case.
It's not the case literally, but it could be the case because of the influence of your parents, or in fact it could possibly even be a soft inheritance which is epigenetically influencing your behavior of your genes. But that doesn't mean you can't change it.
Yeah, exactly.
As soon as you bring awareness to that behavior, you can change it. And if you actually bring awareness to that behavior, which means just put the pause button on, as soon as you feel the reaction to react in a predictable way, just stop and observe your reaction to react. That's all you have to do. The great Indian teacher Krishnamurti used to say, the highest form of human intelligence is the ability to observe yourself without judging yourself. So as soon as you stop and observe the behavior, in a way you transcend the behavior. The more you do it, the more you are not bound by it. You're not imprisoned by it. That's, by the way, in Indian spiritual traditions, that's called the prison of karma. Right? Karma is behaving the same predictable way all the time because that's how you learn to behave. But as soon as you stop, then you have the experience, you can observe the experience, and you're not bound by it, you're free.
But you also free your successors, because as an ancestor, you also have the chance to pass the freedom. In a sense, you're not doing it only for yourself, but just like your ancestors gave you maybe negative predispositions, you can also offer positive predispositions to the future. I mean, that was one of the shocking things, that inheritance is not just genetic, but also epigenetic.
Yeah, it's called soft
I'd love for
inheritance,
you to talk about that.
epigenetic. So every time you indulge in any behavior, like exercise, for example, or yoga, or the breathing exercises that are associated with yoga, pranayama, or eat chocolate, whatever you do. So, whatever the experience is, whatever you do consistently, it starts creating what are called epigenetic marks directly on the gene, but also on the sheath of proteins. The epigenome, which I mentioned, the proteins called histones, and they're like cushions around which the DNA is wrapped, okay? And so like pillows. And when these changes occur, either methylation or something called acetylation, or there's a modulation of the shape of the cushion, then that influences the activity of your genes. So some genes will get turned on and some genes will get silenced, like a switch, like a light switch. Or there's a regulation of the volume of the genetic activity, like a thermostat. So your genes behave both as if they were controlled by thermostats and by switches, on-off switches. And so there are chemical names for these things. We don't have to go in them, although they are mentioned in the book. The point is, those genetic marks, epigenetic marks, can be passed on to future generations. And so the work right now is mostly in animals. So if a mouse is given a mild electrical shock and exposed to a pleasant smell, then future generations of the mice will be afraid of that pleasant smell, even though they've never experienced the shock. Okay? If cows have been zapped electrically in a fence, through a fence, the future generations of those cows will avoid the fence, even though they haven't had any contact with them. So the human story is still in development, but children of Holocaust victims that have been studied, they have memories of stress, even though they were not exposed to that experience. And in fact, the experience may have happened before their parents conceived the child. This is amazing, isn't it? So the parent was in a young age and had the experience, which is now passed on, even though the experience was before the conception actually took place. So where is memory? This is a big question in science today. You know, most people think the memory is in the brain. So if the memory is in the brain, how was it passed on to this future generation? In fact, this is also part of the hard problem of consciousness, which we can discuss. But let me ask you a simple question. Can I ask you a question?
Please.
So what did you have for dinner last night?
I didn't have dinner.
Okay.
Sorry.
What were you doing at that time?
I was giving a talk
Where?
in Sunnyvale campus of LinkedIn.
Okay, so now as I'm asking you the question, you're recalling the experience.
Totally.
You have an image.
Yes.
Okay, you know who the people were, what the conversation was, what the room looked like.
Yes.
Where was that before I asked him the question? You know, believe it or not, science has no answer. Okay. Now, once I asked him the question, there's brain activity. Okay, that's called a neural correlate of memory. A neural correlate, short NCC. But it doesn't tell me where that memory was before I asked him. Now, as we go later into the nature of consciousness and awareness, we can discuss that, but that's where all our memories and our experiences are. They're not in the brain, they're not in the body. All those neuroscientists, some of them will contest this, not Rudy. I asked him, you know, he had a conference with 150 neuroscientists at Harvard. Rudy's a neurogeneticist at Harvard. I said, ask them where at the cellular level in the brain is the memory. And the answer was, we don't know. Okay. But of course, people in spiritual traditions say the memory is in consciousness or awareness. If you want to be really simple about it, it's in your soul. So it's not in space-time. Now,
I'm thinking.
so like this, you can pass on beautiful memories too to your. In animals, now there's evidence that memories can be located 7 generations down the line. Okay, that's what we probably can measure. Okay, but people have memories of ancient times, right? They recall memories. Where are they before you recall them? Just. You want me to get controversial about this?
Please.
Okay. So, as you're listening right now, ask yourself, who's listening? Be aware of who's listening. Do you feel a presence? That's you. It's not your mind, which might be saying, I wanted to go to the bathroom before the lecture, what am I going to have for dinner, etc. Okay, it's not your mind, it's an awareness, it's a presence. In that presence, memories come and go. In that presence, thoughts come and go. In that presence, the body as sensations, images comes and goes, because you had a different body when you were a baby or a teenager. But the presence in which all this happens is not in time. The experience is in time, the thought is in time. The experience of the body is in time. The experience of this room is in time. But the one who's having the experience is not in time. Do you get that? Are you aware of this experience? Yes? Are you aware of yesterday's experience?
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of a particular emotion now? Are you aware of an emotion you can recall? So what's the constant? I am aware. What's not constant is what I'm aware of. Right? So what I'm aware of, which is an experience, is in time. But I, who am aware of the experience, is not in time. What's the most common word we use in any language? I. And if I say, where are you? You usually say, I'm here. Assuming that I is somewhere here. So, I tried this with neuroscientists. So where are you, the I in you, having the experience of me right now? Sometimes they'll point to their eyes. Whereupon it is pointed out to them that your eyes are 2.5 centimeters by 2.5 centimeters. They're 9 centimeters apart. By the time photons get into your retina, they go through a lens, they get inverted. The retina is curved. You should be seeing two of me about this size, 9 centimeters apart, upside down and curved. Well, that's not happening, right? What's happening is photons are reacting with the retina, period. But you are not having that experience, you're having the experience of this. Rumi, the great Sufi poet, he says, look at your eyes, they're so small and yet they see enormous things. Mountains and galaxies and stars. So then you ask somebody, so you're not having the experience of me in your eyes. Where are they happening? Where is it happening? They say, in my brain. Well, the brain is 10 by 14 by 7 centimeters. How do I fit inside your brain? You're not having the experience in your body, okay? Because your body is also an experience in you. Your mind is also an experience in you. The universe is also an experience in you. And where is you? It's the wrong question, because as soon as you say where, you imply a location in space to something that doesn't occupy space. You imply a location in time to something that doesn't exist in time. It's timeless, spaceless, dimensionless, unimaginable, but without it, there would be no experience. So in the Vedanta, the Indian wisdom tradition, they say that which cannot be imagined, but without which there is no imagination. That which cannot be seen, but without it there is no seeing, or perceived, or tasted, or smelled, or thought of, but without which there is no thinking. That's who you are. Tat tvam asi. That thou art. That is, it's the awareness in which all experience happens. We've kind of bypassed a lot of stuff we were going to do.
Please go on. What can I say? I was going to ask you, related to this, is who is the I that can operate over the body? Because you're saying there's an I as a subject. I can behave in a way that will modify my epigenome or my microbiome. I may not be able to modify my genome, but however, everything that is conditioned is not that I, because that I is part of the cycle. So in order to operate, it has to be a transcendent subject. So can you say more about that?
Yes, so this is a very important question in science today. It's called the hard problem of consciousness. So if I ask you to lift this bottle up.
Salute.
Okay, so salute. Okay, now when I asked him to lift this bottle up, the I, had an intention. And then something happened in the brain. Okay, and once something happened in the brain, it's easy. Okay, After that, it's easy. There's electrochemical stuff happening. There's an electrical impulse that goes down a nerve that contracts a muscle, and the bottle gets lifted. But how did the intention activate the neuron? Don't know. Okay, that's why it's called the hard problem of consciousness. Similarly, when you see something, the presumption is, okay, you're seeing this flower, right? But what's coming to your eyes? Photons. Do they have any color? No. Do they have any dimensionality? No. Do they have any mass? No. What's going from your eyes to your brain? Electricity. What's happening in your brain? Electrochemistry. What are you experiencing? A flower. So science, as it is now, which is a reductionist physicalist science, or which has a physicalist ontology, it says this is a hard problem. We don't know how our intentions get modified into biological responses, nor do we know how we experience thought or the world. Now, isn't that something that we don't have a basis for experience? And yet we can do technology, we can make jet planes, and we can send probes into intergalactic space, and we can use computers without having any idea of how we experience anything. So the two mysteries of existence right now, and you can look this up, by the way, this don't have to believe me. You say, what are the two hard questions of science? The two biggest open questions. One is, what's the universe made of? And the answer is, we don't know. 70% of the universe is a mysterious energy which is expanding the universe faster than the speed of light, the space between galaxies. Of the remaining 30%, 26% is something called dark energy, which dark matter, which is a mysterious thing because we can't see it. It's not atomic. Okay, doesn't reflect light, emit light, absorb light, or have any interaction with light. So it's not made up of the usual atomic particles, the elements of the periodic table. What is it? We don't know. So why call it matter? Well, it's responsible for most of the gravity in a galaxy. It bends space-time in the same way as regular matter, which leaves about 4% of the universe, which is atomic. Now, of that 4%, 99.9999% is invisible interstellar dust. So it's mostly hydrogen and helium, which probably got manufactured at the moment of the Big Bang. The visible universe is 0.01%. That includes all the hundreds of billions of galaxies and star systems and planets, and all of that is 0.01%, made up of atoms. But here's the problem. The atoms are particles, and the particles are also waves. So particles are usually thought of as things, units of mass and energy. But waves, you ask scientists, what are these waves made up that show up as particles? And they say they're made of possibilities, which is a very interesting answer. I know that the ocean waves are made of water. I know the air waves are made of the vibration of the atmosphere. But the waves that make particles, which make the universe, are made of possibilities. So you ask them, where are these waves? And they say, they're in mathematical space, Hilbert space. You say, what is Hilbert space? Oh, it's the name of a mathematician. It's a multi-dimensional, infinite space. But where is it? Shut up and calculate. Our science works, even though we don't know what it means. So if you go to Wikipedia and you look up the interpretations of quantum mechanics, you'll see 20 of them. Nobody agrees on what anything means, okay? So what's the universe made of? The best answer is it's made of nothing, okay? That's the first problem. The second is what you asked. Where is intention? Okay, how does it modulate this biology? Where is experience? In other words, what is consciousness and what's the basis of consciousness? Answer is we don't know. Because consciousness has no location in space-time. We just saw that, right? It has no location in space-time, so it's dimensionless. Was the universe made of nothing? Nothing. What's consciousness made of? Nothing. So existence is made of nothing, and awareness of existence is also made of nothing. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe that all there is consciousness. So this is a modified form of consciousness. The brain is also a modified form of consciousness. Thoughts are modified forms of consciousness, and the universe is a modified form of consciousness. Now this is called monistic idealism as opposed to physicalism or materialism. The hard problem is only there if you assume that the universe is physical. But if you assume that the universe is non-physical, which it seems to be because everything that's physical is ultimately, you know this, your whole industry is based on non-physical transactions that are occurring in space and time, right? I can send an emoticon to somebody in South Africa and I can give them a dopamine hit. As long as it looks like a kiss or a hug, okay? Or I send them an insulting remark and I can raise their blood pressure in China, right? So your biology is connected, right, with these symbols. What are these the symbols of? They're symbols of emotions. What are those the symbols of? They're symbols of consciousness. So consciousness is changing biology. This is where the research is going. So we actually, we have done research now, and our collaborators are at Harvard, UCSF, UCSD, Scripps, Duke, and Mount Sinai, where we clearly show that simple meditation will change your gene expression, will change genetic activity, in terms of telomerase, which is the enzyme that controls how you age, will change your microbiome. All the things that Michael mentioned also, they change your gene expression, they change your microbiome, they change your gene activity, they change how you age. Even our biological aging is determined by experience of time in consciousness. So if you say, I'm running out of time, first of all, what is time? Can you ever experience anything other than the present? You can't. Try and experience tomorrow now. Okay? Try and experience yesterday now. You can only do it in imagination, not in real time, right? So then it means the only time is now. And yet we use this internal dialogue, particularly, in the stressed out world, I'm running out of time. So as long as that's your internal dialogue, your biological clock will speed up. Heart rate will be faster, blood pressure will be higher, platelets will be jittery, your body will be inflamed, and if you suddenly drop dead of a heart attack, then you run out of time. Having firmly established the fact that it doesn't exist. You ran out of something that doesn't exist. There's only now, and there's activity around now. And what is that activity? It's all in consciousness. Okay, and where is consciousness? It's not in space-time. And there's a text in India called the Bhagavad Gita. It says, where Krishna is teaching Arjuna this same lesson. He says, who you are cannot be touched by time. Water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it, fire cannot burn it. It's ancient, it's unborn, and it does not know death. So all the fears we have are the fear of death in disguise. Every fear. What is it? It's the fear of letting go of what doesn't exist. Right? Because you can only exist now. And yet you have the attachment to what doesn't exist. Memory, anticipation. And so the fear of death surfaces in all other fears. The fear of the unknown, not the fear of the known, which is now. And then that fear ultimately results in all other fears. So they say human suffering, this is spiritual teaching from the greatest wisdom traditions of the world, East and West, by the way, it's not peculiarly Indian, although the Indians had a good grasp of it. They said the human suffering occurs from not knowing who I is, number one. Number two, grasping and clinging with that which is in time. You can't grasp and cling at something that you can't hold on to, right? You can't hold on to any experience in time. The third is the fear of impermanence, which is the same thing. The fourth is identifying with the socially induced hallucination, which is called the ego I, which is not the real I. And the last is the fear of death. But they're all related to one, not knowing who I is. If you find out who I is, which is the awareness in which experience happens, that's your ticket to freedom. So I think for the sake of simplicity, let's do this, okay? If you do this, I think my trip here might be worthwhile. Okay, once in a while, just stop and say, am I aware? Are you aware? Okay, so she said yes. Where did you go to answer that question? She went somewhere. She went to I. Okay? So now this is an exercise that has been done since ancient times. Now I'm going to ask you the same question, are you aware? But this time, before you answer yes, pause. Are you aware? I'm going to ask you the same question, but this time don't answer it. Are you aware? See, are you aware is a thought. Yes is a thought. But between this thought, are you aware? Yes, is a space. That is awareness. That's you. That's where the I is. That is where the I is. That's your spirit. Okay, that's your soul. That's the only part of you that's real. And that space between your thoughts is the window, it's the corridor, it's the vortex to the infinite mind. Whatever you want to call it. Perhaps at LinkedIn we should call it the cosmic computer. Okay? But that's where I is. So even if once in a while you were to stop and say, am I aware? And before you say yes to yourself, actually pause and experience just being. You will soon realize that you will never have an experience of stress. Because what's stress? It's a thought, right? Stress is the anticipation of threat, psychological, physical. It's an interpretation of what's happening to I. But it's not happening to I. I is just watching. Okay. When the I gets embedded in the experience, that is then the problem. Does this make sense, or is it hopelessly abstract?
Well, sometimes in heated business conversations, one person will say to you, do you know who I am?
Yeah.
And now we should respond, do you know who you are?
That's brilliant. Does anyone know who they are?
Exactly. So with that, I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience or from the feed. We have a rare opportunity.
Fred, we didn't go into details, but I hope you're okay, right?
Absolutely.
I just thought this was more fun.
This is more fun than anything I could imagine. So let's keep the fun going. Please, either walk up to the mic. Yes, please, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Mary. Deepak, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. We all really appreciate it. Going back to the super genes and memories being imprinted on genes for, as you said, it's studied in animals up to 7 years. How do you feel, or what do you think about sort of the violence that's going on, the things that happened in Paris, the terrorism, these things that cause us very big emotional, sadness and stress and grief and anger, all these things. How do you think we can now stop that cycle from those things being imprinted on genes for our descendants?
Okay, I might be a little politically incorrect here, but if you recognize that consciousness is a field, which we kind of hinted at, right? Right now, there's technology that exists that will actually be able to measure your biofield or anyone's biofield within 10 feet of where they are. I mean, it probably propagates all across space-time, but within 10 feet of where you are, it can be detected. There's a special issue on biofield this week, actually. Our institution has 2 articles in it. It's in the Academy of Integrative Healing and Medicine. If you want to check it out, you can go online and check it out. Academy of Integrative Healing and Medicine. It's all on biofields. So your heart, your brain is radiating a field around you, which is actually a reflection of all that's happening in your biology, which in turn is a reflection of what's happening in your consciousness. So if you're feeling peaceful, if you're feeling happy, there's a coherence to that field. On the other hand, you're very upset about these guys, in Mali right now, then your field will also be incoherent. Okay? Just by thinking of that. Now, all of us are doing that at this moment. We are creating electromagnetic fields that are creating interference patterns with each other. Okay? So this room actually is an expression of collective consciousness. Everyone has used this expression. I went into this meeting and the atmosphere was really tense. What did you mean? Okay, that you went into the room and the atmosphere was so tense I could cut it with a knife. Okay, or you say I went to this great cathedral in Europe and I was totally full of awe. Okay, to this holy shrine. What do we mean? It's actually a biofield phenomenon. Now, what's the ultimate meaning of this? The ultimate meaning of this is that the turbulence in the world is a manifestation of our collective psychosis. And it's pointless to blame this or that one particular thing because we are an ecosystem. Okay? So the only way to change that ecosystem is to change yourself. If you decide that you're going to be a peaceful person, and if a lot of people decide, this is what Mahatma Gandhi said, can you be the change you want to see in the world? And there's a critical mass of people like that, then the world will be transformed. Okay, and this is where I think the new technologies come in. This is where what we are doing with LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and all the other things, is we are creating a global brain, right? And we are participating in that global brain's creation. So the more we transform, there's social transformation. There's no social transformation in the absence of personal transformation. So I think instead of playing the blame game, which can be played, it's easy to justify and even be morally outraged. Okay? And totally be morally justifiably outraged. But remember, the word outrage means rage. And if consciousness is a field, then even you're totally justified in being morally outraged, you're adding to the rage. So it goes on through cycles of history. What is happening now happened in the Bronze Age. But now we have a problem. The Bronze Age, they just, had bows and arrows. We have mechanized death, and we have drones, and we have biological warfare, and we have hacking of all kinds. So it's a very strange combination of psychology and primitive behavior that goes back to the Bronze Age with the capacities of the modern age. I think the one thing that technology could help us do is elevate our collective consciousness. And there are ways to do it, through economic ways, through just improving the well-being. What you guys said, you have a well-being campaign here or a program here, you improve the well-being of your own people, and then you help improve the well-being of other people. In fact, the best way to get rid of your enemies is to improve their capacity for well-being and happiness.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Deepak. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Hello, Fred. In your exercise with that young woman, when you said, stop, are you aware? You used the phrase, and I want to be sure I have this accurately, you will experience being. Is that an accurate representation of what you said?
Yeah, but it's a slight, to say I will experience being is implying an activity.
Yeah, that's where I was.
So the correct way to have said it was, you are being. You're being.
Okay. For me, the issue of being is problematic because it seems to me, at least in space and time, that becoming or action or activity is paramount. We keep moving no matter what. And being seems to me to be a static abstraction of that. And I'd just like your response to that.
How would you phrase it?
How would I phrase what?
Existence.
Movement. Movement.
Okay. Well, then it's both an active, dynamic movement, and it's not. See, the way I was trying to express it is being, awareness, and existence are the same thing.
So if being and awareness and existence are the same thing, then...
They're the ground state of all that exists.
But that trifecta has to some degree take place in time.
Say that again?
That trifecta being, the last one you ended with was existence.
Awareness.
Existence takes place in time, does it not?
Existence of experience takes place in time. But existence as the screen on which the program is happening is not in time.
But the screen is static, the program is dynamic.
Correct. But the program is also a dynamic activity of the screen.
Yes, but without the screen, the static being behind it, you have nothing.
Yeah. There has to be a ground state to all that exists, right?
I accept that. My only concern is that it seems to me, when it's phrased in being terms, that becomes static. And that's really the point I'm making and asking for your response.
I'm just asking what other substitute would you have for being or existence or awareness?
Movement.
No.
Why
The
not?
awareness of a thought is not a movement.
Isn't it a movement from wherever I am to the awareness of the thought?
And back into wherever you are.
Right. But there is a movement there.
Yes, the movement is the experience.
And
The gap is not a movement.
The experience you place in space and time, and the being you place out of space and time.
Correct. Immanent and transcendent.
Okay, I can accept that part. Not that I agree with the laughter, but I can accept it.
The universe is the becoming of being.
Yes.
Yeah, that's, this problem with any language. So again, resort to poetry. Rumi says, silence is God's language. Everything else is a poor translation.
Thank you for this exchange.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ankit. First of all, it's a great honor to present your existence here. What I learned from today's talk is that the mind is some sort of a machine which recognizes something from the exterior, and it translates that into your body, and it reacts in terms of your biological movement, right? So my question is to the point where we said that the memory doesn't exist within your body. It's somewhere out there, right? When I'm walking and I see a store shop, it reminds me that my grandpa used to bring me here, but he does not exist right now. I don't see his existence, but his thought come to my mind, and it reflected to my body, and my heartbeat just told how we can enhance this, recognizing things which do not exist or which they are not around. I want to know if my girlfriend is upset about me for something without she's telling me or my. So my point is that we have access to our own memory, let's say. But is there any way you can, since they don't exist in my mind, but they're somewhere out there, can someone else try to access that memory? Is there any way? Because in Vedas...
You have many questions, not one question. People have a lot of... there's, first of all, there aren't too many well-accepted definitions of mind. But I'll give you one that some neuroscientists or cognitive scientists use. The mind is an embodied and relational process. Embodied and relational process that regulates the flow of energy and information. Okay? So it's a process. Where is it? It's everywhere. It's not here. It's embodied here, but it's everywhere. Okay? Before you access the memory, it doesn't exist as a memory. It exists as a potential for a memory. Just like before the wave function collapses, there's no particle. It's just a possibility. So when you access the memory, you're taking a possibility and converting into an actuality. Okay? Therefore, it may or may not be accurate. It's just your basic way of
reaction
of creating it at that moment. Are our memories personal? Well, they are personal, they are collective, they are archetypal, and they will go back all the way to the history of creation. Can you access archetypal memories, collective memories, other memories? Theoretically, yes. Are there people who do that? That's called non-local dormant potentials. Now you can use any kind of language, past memories of other lifetimes, memories of other people, etc. And then one of the questions was, how can you solidify the experience of any memories? By being observant of the experience when it happens. So if I'm watching myself doing this, that memory will be retained. So many times people say, all this stuff about reincarnation, etc., how do you know it's true? Why don't I remember, that I had that experience? Do you remember what you ate for lunch 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday?
No.
So there you are. Do you remember your 14th birthday? So there you are. That doesn't mean you weren't present for your 14th birthday, right? What do we remember? We remember either emotional experiences, strong emotions. Everybody remembers what they were doing on 9/11, or at my age, what happened when JFK was shot. Okay, because it was a very strong emotional experience. So consciousness latches on to emotionally significant experiences. If you want to think about whether your girlfriend has your memory or not, you two guys have to be emotionally so bonded and so connected that you experience synchronicity. Now, by the way, we've done an experiment on this. We've done experiments between girlfriends and boyfriends who are very close to each other, emotional bonding. We have them go into deep meditation, and then we say, now, just make a commitment that you'll be able to stay connected all the time. This is one experiment we've done. It's published, but you need funds to do these things replicably. And then you do what is called an evoked potential. You take a flashlight and you shine it in the eyes of one person, and you have these two people at different locations in what are called Faraday chambers, which means your phone won't pick up the signal. There's no electromagnetic energy going in. You flash the light in one person's brain, the other person's brain responds at the same time. Now this means that there's some level, call it spirit, call it consciousness, call it being, call it awareness, call it existence, where everything is not only connected, everything is one. Because connection implies communication in space-time. But synchronicity is not in space-time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
as we were having this conversation, I remember the words of Nisargadatta Maharaj, a great Indian guru too, who said, in wisdom I am everything, in love I am nothing, and between these two my life evolves.
That's so beautiful.
So I feel we've been confronted with wisdom and we have been shown the fullness of nothing. So thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for coming today. How about another round of applause for our guests today, Deepak and Fred. Deepak is going to be signing books, not just any book, but the book that you have on your chair. You can line up on this side of the room if you'd like to have that done. Also, as a reminder, as you leave, there is a little podium at the outs as you exit. If you could hit the smiley face that best resonates with how you thought of today's experience, that'd be great. Also, have the lookout for a survey that will be emailed to you. And last, you may have seen Deepak wearing our clever little LinkedIn wellness band. We have some more over here if anyone would like some, so nice little reminders of all that. So thank you all for coming today, and again, gentlemen, thank you both very much.